I'm really thankful that I've been given 1 hour to speak, but I'll speak for just 10 minutes if it's okay. You see, in the beginning there was nothing. When I came to School of Architecture in 1968, there were no planners. Doshi asked me to teach a planning course to the students in the School of Architecture. I also taught a studio, and then we came up with just an idea. Why don't we have a school of planning? So we wrote a 2-page note, sent it off to the government of Gujarat, government of India, to the Ford Foundation and some other funders. And then I left to accept a teaching job at Harvard University, where eventually I became a tenured assistant professor. About 2 years later, 1971, springtime, Doshi came through Cambridge, stayed with Kartikeya Sarabhai, who was my fellow student at MIT, different topics, and he said, why don't you come back and start the School of Planning? Because we're getting some funding, but there are no planners in Gujarat. Just H.K. Marwada was the chief town planner, nominated as an IS officer to be the Secretary Urban Development. Apte was the chief planner of Gandhinagar. Dr. Deshpande was a transport planner doing all of the new roads in Gujarat. And there were 2 or 3 other people, none of them ready to come and start the school. We had an idea that an urban designer could start it. Everybody said not acceptable. We can't start the school. A few more days later, Preston Andrade from the Ford Foundation, who I knew from Delhi, came through. That's a little story, but he said, why don't you come and start the school? So in 1971, June, I took a cheap charter flight to London with a return from Paris, and I came overland to India, overland from London to Bombay, and I stopped in Ahmedabad and taught a studio with Doshi for 8 weeks now. And we decided, okay, I will quit my job and come and start the school. So I reached here in October 1971. To me, that's when the school started. And what did we have? No teachers, no curriculum, no idea of what to do. I had no one to talk to because there was nobody who had studied planning in the School of Architecture. And I could talk to Merwada and Apte, who became lifelong friends, who were great supporters. And of course, Doshi, we wouldn't all be here unless Doshi was there, great inspirer. And I often feel it was a benefit we had that was he had not studied planning. If he had studied planning, he would have put us in the straitjacket of SPA Delhi and the mafia in Delhi. Let me tell you something about that. When I came to Ahmedabad, only architects, geographers, and civil engineers were allowed to study planning. My first batch of students had social scientists. We had statisticians, sociologists, economists, no? And all kinds of people. Dinesh Mehta was from IIT Madras, but he was a mechanical engineer. Would not have been accepted in SPA, probably one of the greatest planners of our time. And he and I have been involved with Cept for the last, I don't know, 50 odd years now. So Dinesh would not have been acceptable. And then we had the usual batch of some JJ students and some Cept students now, in a small class, I don't know, maybe 10 students now. So I want to make it clear, we started illegally. We took students who were not allowed to be students now. And we started teaching. At that time, they taught planning meant taking a map and putting colors and saying this zone is for residential, industrial, public, park is green, draw some roads. It's a 30-meter wide road, an 18-meter wide road, a 9-meter, 12-meter, etc. And then putting circles that you need a bridge here, this, there, and that there. And then looking at densities and saying, according to the standards, this many people need a school, a primary school, etc., etc. So it was by the numbers. It was easy. We said no. I said at MIT, we had people doing computer analysis. We had Jay Forrester doing urban dynamics. This was the first school of planning in the world to teach computer science to planning students. How did we do that? We had no faculty here. We went to IIM. Jeshwant Krishna had just come back from Harvard and MIT. He was my friend there. Vikram had bought him Sarabang, a Hewlett-Packard. We said, can our students use them? Can we teach computer analysis, network theory, data analysis to students using computers? We started that course in the first semester. The main themes of our school were poverty, inequality, and environment. I don't think any other school of planning even knew the word environment at that time. And we had seminars, every semester, 2 seminars a week on these topics. We invited everyone from Godavari Parulakar, who was Marxist president of the Kisan Sabha, who wrote an important book called When Man Awakes. We had Danagri, who taught peasant movements, no? So we had seminar topics which you might find in leading European and American universities, probably 2 or 3, but not in India at all. Again, they were not in the structured curriculum. Instead of studios where people sit down and take maps and color them, we said no, we're going to do participatory research. Go into the field, go into the city and document something like the students are doing here. What are the typical dwelling types, shelter types? Chawls, Jhopatpatis, housing societies, and we studied all of these typologies and then tried to map the city, how many are there. Now, in Delhi, you weren't allowed to draw a Jhopatpati on a map because legally they didn't exist. Jhopatpatis were illegal, so you can't draw them on the map, you can't plan for them. The urban villages and cities were all the fabrication and workers who do woodwork, etc. Those were also had lines around them, just said urban village, no planning them. So this school was new in that we taught social structure, social change. We taught urban economics and regional economics. We did the first district plan in India. That was of Panchmahal. We did that with Sardar Patel Institute and with the Gujarat Institute of Area Planning. So We did many, many new things which we should be doing today. Computer modeling. We did work with government agencies. We did the district plan with the government of Gujarat. We had people from 5 or 6 different institutes teaching here. We can still do that. We can do it with the Gujarat, the Ahmedabad University next door. So my point is that when we started with nothing, and we came up with new ideas, and they were all challenged by Delhi. There were some very good people in Delhi who came to our rescue and said, no, we need at least one school like this in India. So we started something very new and very different from scratch. I call it Swayambhu, something which starts from nothing, from an urge or just an idea, and it grows into something very large. No? So this school started more or less against the rules, with new ideas, new people, and I'm very happy that some of my students, like Dinesh and Meera, are still involved from the first batch in work. Anita Gokhale Benninger, she's spearheaded biodiversity in the state of Maharashtra, getting an act passed that ecological zones would be kept as biodiversity parks. I'm also happy that Bindu Parikh is sitting here, a friend of mine since I think 1970. She did her PhD from Boston University. We've been friends since then. And Navin Garecha, when I opened my first office, he worked with me in 1972. And someplace hiding here is Rajesh Sagar, whose father was Paraji. We all know Paraji Sagar. And Paraji had so many children that he gifted Rajesh to me. Rajesh, are you here? He's hiding someplace. He's here. Hi, Rajesh. Yeah? So there are many people here who I've known since the 60s, like Rajesh since 68, 69. I knew Bimal when he was a kid, when they moved into their new house. His father and I used to sit in. Very naughty people. We drank scotch and soda in the garden while he worked as a kid, I don't know, 8 years old or 9 years old, with a carpenter, learning how to do carpentry. So all of these memories come back to me. They're very fond, but to me they're very lively and new, because I think Cept today in the School of Planning, the Faculty of Planning, is still the leader. I think we have the best School of Planning in Asia, not just in India. We're leaders, but we have to take that with a seriousness. It's a very serious challenge to be a leader, because it means we have to do things for the country of India, for the people of India. The challenge is, how do we employ masses of people? How do we integrate them into the city? I'll just end with one statistic. Recently, about 5 or 6 years ago, a friend of mine in Bombay who worked with me did a survey, and he found that if you take the airport and go south, the EMIs, equated monthly installments for billing, only 3% of the 22 million people in the metropolitan area could afford the EMIs south of the airport. South of Thane, Vashi, that next ring, only another 6% could afford any EMI. And then if you go all the way out to the edges, to Karjat, to the edge of the metropolitan area, maybe another 15% could afford something. So what did it mean? It meant about 75% of the people of Bombay cannot afford any kind of legal housing. That means, to me, they're not citizens. They don't have a right to the city. There is no place for 75% of the people in the Bombay metropolitan area to be a legal citizen. They're in makeshift housing, workers' quarters, over redone villages, chopatpatis, and that's the kind of urban environment we've actually created. Not the skyscrapers, not the beautiful boulevards, not the airports. That's the challenge. Your challenge is those 75% of the people who more and more are going to move to cities, because the jobs in rural areas have saturated now. There's a very good study by Anand at Azim Premji University that I'm associated with that says there are no new jobs in rural areas. The job market in the countryside has been saturated. So with that note, I leave this challenge to you, and I have great expectations. Thank you very much.